हम live होंगे, right?
Okay.
Assalamu
Live
alaikum
on.
viewers. I'm Zubair Khan. Welcome to today's guest speaker session hosted by CXO Global Forum in collaboration with NICAT, National Incubation Center for Aerospace and Technologies. We are thrilled to bring together thought leaders and innovators to share insights that matter. The topic for today's session is building revenue models that actually work, how co-sourcing and service augmentation can apply even to emerging startups. But before that, let me introduce CXO Global Forum, NICAT, and our guest speaker, Mr. Fahad Shameem. CXO Global Forum is the largest C-level knowledge sharing platform in Pakistan with active members across the USA, UK, KSA, UAE, and beyond. We bring together thought leaders, technologists, and business strategists to discuss ideas that shape industries and fuel innovation. NICAT, Pakistan's first and only aerospace focused incubation center, it provides a growth platform for early stage startups working in deep tech, defense, aviation, and dual use technologies. Our guest speaker today is Mr. Fahad Shameem. He has an exceptional track record in driving growth through innovative go-to-market strategies. At IBEX, he helped scale the business 10x and elevated contribution margin from 30% to 55%, which is a great, huge success. His focus on co-sourcing and service augmentation has resulted in sourcing over 120 multi-year contract across telecom, healthcare, food delivery, and different other departments. So today, Fahad joins us as a strategic GTM evangelist to share his experience and insights. So let's meet and greet Mr. Fahad. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam, Zubia. Thank you very much for such
So how,
wonderful introduction.
you are welcome, and thank you very much for sparing some time from your busy schedule for this guest visit session.
Appreciated, bhai. Thank you for pulling me in. Thank you for having me over.
So Fahad, now I would request to please share your insights on today's topic.
Right. Um, so just to sort of synthesize a little bit about backgrounds. Um, Predominantly, I'm a bachelor's and a master's in computer science. And I worked about 5 years in software development and consulting related areas. And that has given me, besides my graduate degrees, the actual work environment has given me an in-depth understanding of some of the advantages, disadvantages, crevices that come across when you are building out products and scaling them up. And of course, I'm predominantly focusing on products that are technology based. After that, I moved into growth of different companies, scaling them up across different territories, but still they were all related to technology related areas. So I think I have a sort of a balanced mesh of experience, both from a development perspective and then subsequently marketing those products and services across multiple territories over the past couple of decades. So that I believe is something that I want to sort of use as experience and elaborate with your audiences. I'm sure all of them are fledgling entrepreneurs, startup entrepreneurs, initiating their entrepreneurial journeys. And I just wanted to share some of my feedback in sort of helping them understand the overall diaspora that's around there, and the various complications involved in it. So now, while I am not fully aware of the various uh, concepts of MVPs and products and services that are at play, so I'll keep it generic, focused on technology stacks and related product areas, and then people can probably take guidance from that particular areas. So first and foremost, I think what happens is, okay, when you have a wonderful idea, you have an idea that resolves a solution, that solves a particular problem in the real world markets. You have a niche edge over and above others. You of course want to bring it to market as quickly as possible, as early as possible, right? And I think that's the right strategy for it as well. Having said that, enabling an MVP is itself a sort of a tricky scenario to build up on, right? I have seen left, right, and center people focusing on getting a product out in the development stages, in the deployment stages, above and beyond actually validating the concept. So I think concept validation is what I'm trying to refer to. Okay, once you have an idea, once you have a particular focus, once you have a eureka moment, the validation of that particular idea and that usage, there are multiple ways of going about it. The easiest way, of course, is to acquire investments and or invest your own money into developing an MVP and then showcasing it around. I think that concept validation prior to the MVP can also be very critical in validating that concept from the market, from your peers, from your, with your competitors for that matter, uh, as well. And the way to go about it would be, I generally believe in focusing or in minimizing your investments as much as possible while validating your concepts as you go along. Right. A lot of times, in you may be knowing more than I do. Okay, a lot of ideas fail right after the MVP stages, just because their validation, their conceptual usage was not simply verified in the market, for the market, by the people, by the industry for that matter. I understand that there are challenges of beating others to the market. I understand that, but at the same time, the validation I think is very critical and is very urgent and should be done as quickly as possible. And that can simply be done via design flows for that matter. You don't exactly have to have a full-fledged application built up around it, around a concept to validate. You can have a design flow validation to it. So I think my focus number one, or step number one, to break down that idea, that concept into pieces, into visual pieces, if not deliverables, but visual pieces that then subsequently can be validated by the industry. That's one part of it. And that would, of course, allow you to invest much lesser compared to the actual MVP. Subsequently, during the MVP stages, you have multiple combinations, multiple permutations for that matter. For the MVP cycle, you generally go about acquiring funds and then developing it on your own, or depending on a third party. In that case, I found that if you are not a techie by background, and you don't have a technical or even a project management experience for that matter, leave technical or technology out of it. If you don't have prior project management experience, then you are putting yourself at a higher risk compared to others when owning up the delivery of that MVP. And that is where I think individuals need to understand themselves and their capabilities and their talent as of now rather than as of later. Of course, everyone wants to be a billionaire entrepreneur and a big time successful entrepreneur. And for that, you, of course, have to have that expertise and skills and capabilities. But as of now, individuals or companies perhaps should evaluate and understand what their core strengths are and what their core weaknesses are as well. And once they do that, they'll generally come up to a proposition where they would understand that more likely than not, they are not project managers, or they think that they are project managers, but they may not turn out to be, or they may not have that particular prior background and understanding and experience in that. So in that regards, of course, depending on a third party, and then yeah, but you have this habit, especially in Pakistan, where you want to hire technology stack developers and then hoping for them to deliver miracles for you. And it does happen. It has happened in the past. It does happen, but there are no guarantees to it. And one of the mantras that I have experienced, that I've learned out of experience, is when you're working on a specific idea, ideation, conceptualization, you're better off working with a bunch of experts who've done it previously, or who have had this experience of delivering such solutions previously. And so there are two things that comes to mind during this particular cycle. For the MVP, time is of essence. It has to be delivered maybe within a quarter's time, maybe within less than a quarter, maybe 6 months, depending on the complexity of the MVP. And for you to be able to hire a team, put the infrastructure in place, put the necessary enablements in place, it takes time for you. And then of course, life hits back at you. So there would be churn in resources. There might be some of the resources might leave, might not. Managing them out, etc., enabling them to deliver in a timely manner sometimes becomes too overwhelming for that MVP to actually roll out. And then it sort of, as I said, the critical mass for the entrepreneurs has to be focused on visual deliverables rather than the back end parts of it, right? Because that ideation is what will take the company forward or that entrepreneur forward. Without that ideation, without that visualization, the idea will probably not go forward anywhere. So, and for each individual, for each entrepreneur to understand that where are their strategic time should be, where their strategic time should be allocated more so. Is it in terms of managing the resources or managing the deliverables, or is it in terms of visualizing the concept, validating it further, taking it to market for validation, etc., and then taking it forward? So it's more of a strategic outlook rather than a day-to-day transactional outlook. So in that sense, I think depending on a verified, validated third party provider that can do the trick for you in a much lesser amount of time, with a lot more with a lot less risk, with a lot more dependability, I think is probably something that people shy away from. And I think that should be more holistically adopted. Now the idea of having um, a partner or a vendor work out the MVP for you. Um, I've seen a lot of companies who want to do that, who have been offering to do that. I've seen a lot of MVPs being designed by third parties as well. Not everybody has yeah, there is a relatively higher success ratio, but there have been some caveats also. There have been some fallbacks also. So I think decision of choosing the right partner is critical for an industry like ours, for an economy like ours, for the diversity and talent that we are able to bring to the table within Pakistan. I think there are a lot of companies who are up and coming, who are hungry, who are small and mid sector, not necessarily large scale. I generally deter going with large scale or high end partners simply because of the lack of focus they may have vis-a-vis my MVP application. So I would rather choose a credible, focused, and within the industry, within the technology stacks. So just to complete my previous sentence, I would rather choose a partner whose success is also lined up with my success rather than the other way around, right? um, and then within the choosing of the partner, within the technology stacks, within the particular MVP ideation that you're focusing on, there are companies that particularly focus on a certain technology stack. For example, AI being a relatively common buzzword nowadays. There are companies who boast of having AI, But I believe that there are a lot of those companies that boast about AI have it as, just as an extension, not necessarily as a focus area. And I know of companies that are purely focused or have been focused predominantly around AI technology stacks from the very beginning, right? So their level of expertise, their in-depth understanding, their experience, I think, is extremely different compared to choosing a partner who has AI as an additional bundle, but not necessarily the foundation. So this was just to sort of give an example. In each of those technology stacks, I think there are relevant examples there. And not just that, when you are choosing a particular uh, partner, then you of course have to understand that that partner may end up benefiting you during the whole life cycle, not just the MVP, but during the secondary stages. So while you are at it, while you are validating a particular partner, it would be better for evaluating a set of partners that can work with you over long term. Rates aside, their focus, their hunger, their willingness to support you, and their dependence on making you a success, I think some of those are the critical factors. Right? And that's where I've seen people shying away from in general. The idea of entrepreneurship, the idea of developing MVP is about owning all of it. I think that's what the general concept has been, particularly within Pakistan, that I have to have complete ownership. Unless I'm managing the entire life cycle, somehow for some insane reason that entrepreneurship, doesn't fly, and people are hell bent, particularly Pakistanis, I feel, particularly hell bent on sort of controlling the entire life cycle. Now, of course, there's a very important and a critical question of IP and ownership, which of course can be locked down via legal contracts, ensuring your safety, your continuation, your confidentiality. So there are a bunch of simpler ways, I would say, where you can control what is really important and critical for you while um, handing over or depending on partners to deliver the necessary stack of services for you. Co-sourcing per se as a phrase and service augmentation. I think I'm referring to both of these elements when I'm talking about all of these things. And the focus and the concept is to simply open up your heart and your mind also, to look at companies who can help you grow quickly, whom you can depend on, and who can deliver. For example, if there's again, just for relevance's sake, if there's an AI focused company that has been focusing on AI technology stacks for the past few years, their roadmap will always be inclined towards AI improvements or AI new technology adoptions, or AI adoption itself. Now compare that with another company which does CRMs, ERPs, and a bunch of other stuff, coupled with AI, of course, their adoption focus might be different. Their usage of AI would be different. They would still be relying on some of their existing technologies, which may or may not have become archaic as of now. We all know how quickly the technology is evolving. So within a matter of 6 months to a year, maybe a couple of years at best, you'll figure out that the foundation you wanted to build your platform on wasn't entirely the best foundation, and then you'll have to redo that again. And there have been numerous examples where they have had to redo the entire foundational stack. So just a few sort of insights into perhaps the longer picture, and the focus areas that the company is relying on. Um, Similarly, for security stacks, for that matter, a company that's purely focused on security validations has been doing security implementations for the past many years. I think as a is a good contender of choice compared to some of the other firms which are doing cybersecurity as an addition. Right? So so I generally tend to focus on functional specific partners whose roadmap is to focus on that area for the near term, right? For the next 3 to 5 years. I know they're not going anywhere. I know their focus will remain the same, right? And then because their focus will remain the same, they will, I would say, implicitly keep on improving their uh, technology stacks as and when it comes along. So that's the other part of it. Then, so service augmentation, and coming back to the original points. Um, so here's how the scenario is. While while I'm working on a technology stack, there is another partner who has the relevant infrastructure available. There will be a third partner who has the relevant facilities available. There is a fourth partner who will probably have the stack of resources available. Now, the question of ownership comes about here. I want to own everything up. So I want to own a particular facility. I want to own a particular infrastructure. I want to own a certain stack of people. That is what I'm mandating against. Okay, that is not probably, not in all the cases, the right way forward. Predominantly, it is not the right way forward, at least initially, because the IP that you're relying on, the core IP that's critical to your growth, to your existence, the core IP is still under your ownership. And if it is under your ownership, then it doesn't really matter who's delivering at the end of the day behind it, right? And we've seen in companies people joining startups and then, of course, leaving or moving elsewhere, right? So as far as ownership is concerned, these scenarios happen. And once, while you have the IP under control, I think that execution can always be process driven rather than people driven. Of course, there would be certain magicians, as I would say, right at the top, that would be, doing all the magic, coupled with the teams that are at the back end enabling it. Acha. So I think that's my the long and short of it. And of course, we have to understand beyond the MVP, as I initially pointed out, here the partners may have, we can look at partners as a longer term outlook rather than a short term outlook. We tend to own everything. We tend to have this feeling of care. Unless we are owning everything, we don't exactly have everything under control. No, that's not correct, right? Acha. The other part of it is, the other angle of looking at it is here, when I come across companies that have validated a particular concept, built out an MVP, rolled it out across, have a certain stack of credible, happy, successful customers using their idea. Um, I see them restricting themselves within the focus areas that they are focused on, for that matter, right? um, so they may or may not necessarily think about augmentation in terms of advancing their offering or widening up their offering in terms of the infrastructure. The other parts, there are multiple parts to a product, right? So technology development is one part of it. Then, of course, security is another part of it. The third part of it is infrastructure, where it's going to be deployed, where it's going to be run. And the fourth part of it is continuous change management and its maintenance. So there are 4 or 5 different core parts, which, as a company, they may decide to offer one part and may not be willing to offer the other parts. Or they may just, I usually see them offering the deployment part or the usage parts, and the maintenance parts, right? And then the change management, of course, comes part of it, but not necessarily the infrastructure. In some cases, of course, infrastructure would be a critical component to it as well, if you're talking about B2C services and products, like marketplaces for that matter. So in those cases, having the entire infrastructure uh, or the end-to-end architecture enabled, figured out at the very least, if not being offered, I think it's critical. And then, of course, customers, once they are happy with your product or your life cycle or your deliverable, they're normally inclined to be able to give you the total ownership of the execution of that ideation. right? And those, I come from a B2B background, so pardon me, matlab, I am matlab, more focused on B2B areas, and of course, some of these areas, almost all of these areas, would apply to B2C as well. So coming back to my original point, having a larger offering and offering complete ownership of your concept, of your idea, into a existing, and offering it as a service to the end customer, I think is the holy grail, as they say, right? That's the kind of model we should envision. It's just like, in the manufacturing industry, some people are offering raw materials, people are offering some partial manufactured products, and then there are others who are offering end-to-end complete product out of the overall supply chain. So the idea behind this is to be able to, not all the time, but at least strive towards offering the end-to-end ownership, so that since there's one party taking ownership of it, there'll be less finger pointing, and of course, there'll be less, I would say, disruptions that would otherwise dilute your successes, reduce your successes, allow other entities to raise fingers, and of course, introduce a bunch of everyday issues that come about. We've seen it happening. We still see it happening. If you control the entire supply chain from a tech perspective, then you end up having a much more resilient customer experience out of that overall exercise. So those are, some of the few points, and from a from a from a revenue model charging perspectives, there are, of course, when we talk about products and ideas that are bundled into a particular fuller stack of implementations, and I'm trying not to focus on any specific idea. Generally, the subscription model, subscription software as a service, infrastructure as a service, transaction as a service, are the models to go for. They allow flexibility to the end customer in terms of how they use it, but it also allows us, as the entrepreneurs, as the product owners, to scale up with the companies that we are working with the markets, in the markets that we are working with, for that matter. As the market increases, as the economy increases, as our customers scale up. So when they scale up, they will be able to offer a additional value proposition. People sometimes tend to have a smaller picture. They say, okay, I've spent about, $10, let's say, for the development part, so I'm okay with charging them $25, and that's pretty much it. And I want to make sure that my initial investments are all backed in, but at the same time, I don't really have a slightly longer picture on it. And I think that's where subscription models help you. While they would be lower at the initial end, if you're able to survive that, and there are multiple ways of how to survive that particular initial roadblocks. When companies scale up, then you will automatically scale up with them. Yeah. So I think that's another very critical point, to keep your pricing and revenue models flexible. We see it across the board here. People are transitioning towards usage-based models or subscription-based models. Some of them are offering usage-based models, others are offering subscription models. These are all established models, right? And I think that's the way to continue. With software companies, I still see a larger trend happening on capex versus opex, and people preferring capex for some strange reason within Pakistan. But I'm a strong proponent of subscription models, of monthly revenue models. Even though smaller in numbers, they tend to be long term. So we are talking 3-5 year contracts, and then those result in a much higher net worth and a net profitability cycle comparatively. So, do we still have time?
Yes, we have. Uh, if you have something else to discuss, you can, please.
Um, Okay, so I think coming back to the original point,
Mm.
when this tech startups bubble really started, it was all about acquiring market uh, capture percentages, on how much we can capture. We've seen the stories of Kareem and Food Panda being disruptive in terms of their own industry stacks, and and yes, of course, this is still a continuation. There, I'm sure there are tons of disruptions in the making, still happening, still waiting to happen also, and in those areas market domination can become a critical point. But in a lot of areas, while disruption happens, that disruption might be somewhat lesser, especially if you're focused on the B2B side rather than on the B2C side. And so focusing your ideation towards a disruption of a sizable nature, I think that's probably one of the wrong ways of looking at it. If you see Salesforce for that matter, it took its sweet time in dominating the market. It had a lot of competition. It continued to have a lot of competition. It still has a lot of competition. But slowly and steadily, with the passage of time, it has eroded other companies' market share and sort of taken up the lion's share, as they call it. So, um, but if you see disruptions within the B2C environments, like ride hailing for that matter, like food delivery for that matter, those disruptions happen very quickly and very massively. So, depending on where your idea is fitting, you have to be realistic around how much that disruption would be and how much of an impact would that create. And that's where I would like perhaps to offer care individuals or entrepreneurs or startups can perhaps ground themselves in realities. I understand having higher goals is extremely important, right? Having strategic goals is extremely important. Having quicker goals is extremely important. Um, we must consider them, we must debate and discuss, but at the same time there are caveats around it also. So when people discuss the positives but don't discuss the negatives, I think that's the only point I'm trying to drive at. Regardless of whatever the situations may be and whatever the impact you feel you can create, the negative side of it perhaps should be discussed a lot more than the positive side. The positive side are, once you grasp it, once you grab it, of course they're the easier ones. But the negative side is something that people kind of ignore discussing about. And when uh, the cycle tanks, then do become in a very difficult and a desperate situation otherwise. I think that pretty much completes my discussion. Let's see if I have some other points to cover.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I've covered up pretty much.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Fahad, for the valuable insights. Your experience and clarity on revenue models will definitely benefit many of the founders and teams in our community. Thanks to NICAT for providing this platform and to all the participants for joining in. Stay connected with CXO Global Forum for more such knowledgeable sessions. I would really appreciate viewers to connect with Mr. Fahad on LinkedIn. Thank you very much, everyone. Take care.
Thank you for having me over. Take care, have a nice day.
Okay.
Allah
Take care.
Hafiz.
Allah Hafiz.